All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. Going to be getting into the Week 5 preview, touching on my favorite values, core plays, thought processes for the week lineup-wise, and then get into a little bit of stacks as well. But first, we're going to go ahead and touch on the Week 4 recap. So to do that, I'm just going to go through the 9-5 write-up from last week, guys. So pretty darn solid week overall. The quarterback I was on the most ended up being Patrick Mahomes, who just as price tag felt like the correct play, especially because we could end up pairing him up with Xavier Worthy, who ended up being healthy in that game. We were a little bit worried about, Worthy maybe taking a hit and like re-aggravating his shoulder injury. But all in all, that was the only concern. And so he was someone I ended up going out of my way to target as well, especially as the week progressed. But yes, Puka Nacua was the clear-cut pay-up. We knew the make or break point for some lineups would be this high exposure range where we're getting like too many good plays around like 5.5. Ricky Pearsall unfortunately ended up getting injured. You had Geno Smith, Mr. Jacoby Myers pretty much wide open twice and actually resulted in an INT, so he kind of underthrew him. Keenan Allen was fine. Quentin Johnson ended up having a good game, and then Drake London ended up being very useful there as well. Running back wise, very good here as well, guys. So again, core plays, we weren't even thinking about the option of not playing Amari Hampton or James Cook. Those were just two of the easiest plays on the slate. Hammered them. Then from there, it was really a question mark. Do we want to pay up for CMC, who was just very chalky, kind of need to play him, or do we want to go with one of the pivots, and both of them ended up paying off? So Swift was projected to be one of the better values on the slate. Obviously, that ended up working out for him, especially scoring that touchdown. And then Woody Marks. Woody Marks was one that I called out to you guys. I'm like, I don't really get why he's only 1% projected owned. I'm going to be around 7%. That obviously ended up working out there as well. I don't know. That's crazy. That's still crazy. If he was priced at maybe 5.5 or so, maybe, or even 5K, I get where people would maybe not want to be on him. But clearly people weren't watching film when it came to Woody Marks. That's pretty much it. And this has been something that we have actually seen in the preseason and then through the first 3 weeks as well. And then we saw the snaps tick up as well. That's just one of those spots where we probably won't get again. And it was just a head scratcher. The fact I would have guessed that he would have been 7%, but the fact that he was only 1%, I'm like, okay, I don't need to go crazy with this play. And lineup process wise, it was kind of tough to play him because the rest of your lineup was weird. There weren't like necessarily elite payups other than the ones we are going out of our way to target. And then tight end wise as well. Again, I was going with Hunter Henry for most of the week. That was just going to be the core play I went with. He ended up scoring, I would say 2 touchdowns, but it got one. There's another one where he was on the inch line. If you guys watched the Tucker Kraft call get overturned, which was insane to me on Monday Night Football. Basically what happened with Hunter Henry, except for it didn't get overturned. They just reviewed it and said it stood, which I guess I was okay with in that regard. I think if it was ruled a touchdown, it would have been a touchdown. And then kind of a sharp call as well with Tommy Tremble, who ended up being a very high scorer on the slate. Ended up scoring like 15 DK points, was one of my favorite values on the slate as well. Lineup process-wise, guys, very good. Both cash lineups ended up cashing, and my favorite GPP build ended up finishing very well. I think I ended up scoring like 185, 181 or something like that, so very good stuff there as well. So, guys, really, the last 2 weeks have been, on paper, seemingly pretty predictable, and it was just a matter, again, kind of the rec combinations of players in some soft pricing ranges. I mentioned like 2 weeks ago, we had like 6 really good running back plays. That's just kind of getting the correct combination of those running backs. They basically all end up hitting value. And then last week, we had about like 6 really good receiver plays in that 5.5K range, and it was about getting that correct combination of receivers as well. This week is more difficult, I will say that. So I want to start out with actually taking a peek at some of the game totals here. We are getting a couple games that are going to be higher scoring. Okay, so we do have Dallas versus New York. This one's going to be about 47.5 total points. That could be an appealing game for us to get to on the slate. The most appealing to me is going to be this game, the Raiders versus the Colts. We look at the game total, it's going to be about 48.5 total points, guys. And then another kind of interesting spot is actually going to be the Bengals versus the Lions. This one's at 48.5 points. The issue is that the Colts are going to be heavy favorites and the Lions are going to be heavy favorites as well. Got to see how the Bengals end up producing on Monday night as well. So taking a peek at this week quarterback-wise, again, it's more difficult. Now, maybe Justin Fields, I'm recording this video before Monday Night Football, maybe he goes out and just looks great on Monday Night Football to the point where we don't really even have to think about him as a click at his price again, so just being the clear-cut option, because he does get that matchup going against the Dallas Cowboys, who have just been very poor. Every single week they've looked bad. Quarterbacks have just dominated against them. Justin Fields should be able to dominate. The thing with Justin Fields is if we are playing him, then we are also probably thinking about playing Garrett Wilson, who also seems to to be too cheap given the matchup. Again, this could all change after Monday night, depending on how Justin Fields looks and if he's able to get the football to Garrett Wilson. But I think as it stands right now, as I'm recording this video, that is going to be kind of our first look at quarterback. But there's plenty of other options there as well. So Jackson Dart ended up rushing the football a lot, guys. 10 rush attempts, 54 yards, ended up scoring a touchdown there as well. In the passing game, I wouldn't say he looked bad, but, a little bit left desired. He was very good, though, rushing the football. And if he's going to be someone that can rush the football that much, he will be appealing in GPPs, especially in a very good matchup there against the Saints. So kind of a fun one there. Sam Darnold's been pretty darn efficient as well over the past few games. It's just you watch the game and then you look at his DFS score and you're like, wait, he hasn't scored 20 yet? DFS points? Like he's been crushing it. And like the quarterback rate kind of tells us the story there as well. Like he's been playing really well. Maybe this game against the Bucs becomes a little bit of a shootout. Maybe a game that we can attack in that regard. It will be interesting in Monday Night Football. Do the Bengals get going? And I mentioned this, the biggest problem with the Bengals the whole year has been their offensive line. They still have all the great weapons there. And if the offensive line improves, maybe we're looking at Jake Browning at 4.9. That's just such a cheap price tag in a game that, again, is supposed to be higher scoring. Maybe the offense can keep it close in that game. Daniel Jones is also pretty darn interesting. So, didn't do too much in the game last week. I still threw for 262 yards in that game. Did have another touchdown, though. I think most people have seen the play. Mitchell ends up having a touchback. And if you haven't seen the play, here it is. So kind of a toss-up ball there by Daniel Jones. Very great play there for Mitchell as well. And the ball just slips out of his hands as he's going to celebrate into the end zone. Okay. And so obviously if you give that play to Daniel Jones, his day does look a little bit better there as well. And he doesn't have to force some stuff later on in the game. Some of the better plays that we are getting in this game are actually going to be with the two receivers for the Colts. Now, Michael Pittman Jr. at his price tag to me is probably just going to be someone that ends up being a core play. Sure, he might be a little bit touchdown dependent, but he has had such a pretty high floor in regards to his targets. 10, 6, 5, and 8 guys. That's been very great. And now he gets a very good matchup against the Raiders, matchup that I think we're just going to be attacking really the whole year. And it wouldn't be surprising to see Pittman have one of those another very good games. This is a spot where, again, given the pricing, he just kind of seems like the clear option. Now, that being said, Josh Downs is extremely cheap. It wouldn't be surprising to see him have a good game, especially after Mitchell kind of had that blunder. And if Alec Pierce is still out as well, that should also benefit Josh Downs a decent amount. And then we do need to talk about some other kind of stacking opportunities as well. Justin Herbert going against the Washington Commanders is going to be an interesting spot there. He kind of had a bad game last week, guys. Wasn't able to get that much going. You would expect him to bounce back in this game. So he's someone that I think we can trust to have a good game. Dak, guys, has been extremely impressive. Okay, he has just looked very good. Now, me being a Packers fan, I will say it really seemed like the Cowboys were getting away from a lot of offensive holds, but at least the rest were consistent with that. They didn't like randomly start calling it. And that's what I'll take from a reffing crews, as long as they're being consistent. Kind of, oh well, if that makes sense. It's kind of like an umpire in baseball. That's kind of how I view it. And Dak was able to take advantage of it. Dak has looked great, guys. 4 straight weeks. You could argue he's been the best quarterback in the league thus far this season. I think most people would say Josh Allen, and then there's like 6 that you could go with after that as like the next best Dak you could consider. They're just playing such great football. CeeDee Lamb is still expected out, but if we're going to see, Dak continue to throw the football 40 times, obviously that's appealing to us as well. And then we're calling out as well, guys, Bryce Young does get a good matchup going against Miami. He's cheap as well, 4.7. He has gone off in another game that was a pretty good, matchup there as well. Other games not doing well. So maybe it's just someone that we can trust in matchups. And even still, like, I know 10 points is not great, but 10 points as a floor at 4.7, we'll take that. And then you factor in a great matchup as well. I can buy into that as well. So not terrible there. Not great. But that's the issue, guys. We can make cases for a lot of the quarterback plays on the slate, whereas the previous slates it's been like, all right, we got 4 here. That's kind of the tough part. Same thing with the running backs as well. I could get into reasons why Jonathan Taylor in this very high scoring game is going to be in a great play. Jahmyr Gibbs in a very, very good matchup, a matchup that we want to be targeting against the Bengals. He's going to be a great option, and he certainly is. We always worry about his workload. Maybe you could just pivot to David Montgomery instead. Saquon Barkley, pretty solid matchup, I will say, as well against the Denver Broncos. You would expect him to be able to continue to do what he's done, probably around 17 DFS points in this game. Devon Achane, gets a fine matchup there against the Carolina Panthers, a matchup that I think we'll want to be targeting, assuming he's good to go. And he's playing Monday night. He's kind of the one I'm going out of my way to target just because of his usage in the passing game and because it's going to be a pretty solid matchup for him. But you can make the case for Bucky Irving as well. Like, that all makes sense. And so to me, we are going to be going a little bit lower now. Javonte Williams probably becomes one of the better plays on the slate as well, with Miles Sanders getting injured. I kind of mentioned I thought Miles Sanders would continue to get a little bit of work, and then he got injured. So if he's going to be out in this game, Javonte Williams becomes much more appealing because then he's just looking at a workhorse workload even more there. Because Sanders was kind of commanding some snaps because he was looking good in the rushing game. And so if we're going to be seeing Javonte Williams just play 85% of the snaps and getting 20 opportunities again, in a decent matchup against the Jets, that's going to be appealing for me as well. And then we got to look at Cam Scatterbo as well. So the problem with this week is we are seeing players start to get to a correct price tag. Okay, that does typically happen around week 5, where all the soft prices that we had at the start of the season are now elevated up to the point where we're having to think about some roster decisions. And I think that's going to be true with Cam Scatterbo here as well. But again, he does draw a pretty good matchup there against the Saints. You would expect him to get involved in the passing game and in the rushing game as well. I do think when Tyrone Tracy comes back, we'll see probably a little bit of a split workload like we had saw in that game against the Chiefs until obviously got injured. I think he looked fine. I do think the offense last week was just, they got off to an early lead. The game plan was, don't make mistakes. Let's rush the football bunch, keep that clock running, and we'll win this game. And they did. So correct decision there. And so I do think he ends up being a player that we can target at a cheap price tag that's going to give us around 20 opportunities in a plus matchup. But obviously, guys, the easy play, I would say, on the slate is going to end up being Woody Marks. Okay, so Woody Marks, you would argue, is also too cheap again in this game. So the thought process with him, obviously, as a play last week, is that we knew that it was going to be a split backfield. And if we were going to get a player in a split backfield playing 50% of the snaps that has the potential to potentially take over as the RB1 in that game, because again, he's looked good and obviously had the potential to fall into the end zone in a good matchup against the Titans, like obviously we're going to target that. He did end up getting the most work in that game. Okay, Nick Chubb did not look bad. I don't think he's going to go away, but I do think it's going to be more of Woody Marks, RB1, Nick Chubb, RB2. Maybe Chubb is more of the goal line back. We could see that happen. Woody Marks, just continues to look good. He's good in the blocking game as well. Obviously, ended up scoring 2 touchdowns, and now he gets another good matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, a team that could be without Lamar Jackson as well. That could mean that Woody Marks actually becomes much more appealing as well, because we don't have to worry about maybe the potential of Lamar Jackson just having a great game and making this game end up being a blowout. But that wouldn't even matter for Woody Marks. That could actually benefit his role there. And we already have the coaches kind of saying that he's going to end up probably getting more work. And so to me, he just ends up being a pretty easy click for us right now. Even if he only plays like 50% of the snaps again, if he's going to give us 20 opportunities, we should be doing that. I mentioned last week, guys, you should have already picked up Woody Marks. If he's still available in your season-long leagues, spend all your fab. I think that's definitely the best way to go, best move there. I spent half of my fab last week in a league, actually, because I felt like it was just a correct opportunity to get a player that could be a league winner. And then worth calling out another player that some people were thinking would be a league winner, Trey Benson. He only played he split workload there with Amari DiMercato having a pretty good game there as well. So kind of interesting there. We're going to go ahead and jump on into the receivers here, guys. Again, depending on how the Bengals end up looking here in week 4 on Monday Night Football, we could either begin to more Jamar Chase or less of him. And again, that really just depends on the O-line play. I do think St. Brown is going to end up being a pretty safe play as well. He just continues to produce 2 touchdowns last week. You would definitely think that touchdowns are due to regress a little bit here. That is something that I don't necessarily love there. 2, 1, and 3. That's not going to continue here, guys. And it's not like he's getting a massive target share. I mean, still 7, 8, 11, and 6. Like, that is still pretty good. He is the player I'm currently paying up for because he does have a high floor. But I will say, it's not like we're getting Puka Nacua there where we feel perfect about him as a play. We have to think about it. Okay, Chase is interesting. JSN, Amika Buka could probably pass up over them. If we're going Woody Marks, then obviously Nico Collins ends up being less appealing to us. still he's in a good spot. Should be a safe like 10 plus DK points for us. George Pickens obviously coming in off of that very good game, high target share, 11, 9, and 9 targets over the past few games. If they're able to do that against the Green Bay Packers, you would assume that they're going to be able to do that against the Jets as well. I always struggle, though, to completely trust Pickens. You got Courtland Sutton, who's typically a very safe option as well at a cheap price tag, $6K. That's too cheap. He's someone that, I don't know, in a weird way, like I don't necessarily want him to go off on Monday Night Football because I think he's going to be someone that at that price tag we can get to, and I don't want his ownership shooting up too much, but he's a fine play. And then we go ahead and get back into a lot of the Chargers players. So this is going to be the theme of the season, I think, here, guys, is really trying to figure out these receivers. So the talent has not really fallen off for Ladd McConkey. I do want to make that clear. This is kind of just a weird thing that's happening right now at the start of the season. I do think as the season progresses, there's going to be a point where he has a massive game, and then he kind of takes over for that receiver one role, maybe, because I think he and Allen's still going to demand a good target share like he's done, but Quentin Johnston has been surprised in terms of his workload. So he is like right now, based off of this production, just like flat out now in receiver one conversation. Seriously, like in overall. And it's not like the talent's gotten better. It's just kind of one of those weird spots where it's all coming together for him. And the targets are there, 13, 10, 7, 7. The workload's there. He's getting the ball down the field as well. Another good matchup this week as well against Washington. I think I'm just going to trust him, and maybe this ends up being the Ladd McConkey week, but the issue is they're all too cheap. They're all almost still the correct play given the price tag. So then we continue on. We'll see if Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be able to parlay, a good game into, or I should say a good half into another good game. Wendell Robinson, you would imagine, would get a healthier target share in this game with Malik Neighbors sustaining what seems to be a season-long injury. I think that's been confirmed. So he should get a higher target share. Didn't get that, though. I was a little bit shocked by that because that Neighbors injury happened pretty early on in the game. So interesting stuff there. I already mentioned Josh Downs is someone that I like. And then we do have to talk about the Dallas Cowboys receivers. Turpin was pretty heavily involved. And then you had Tolbert, who kind of in halftime had a big catch, in overtime had a big catch. I don't know. To me, I watched Tolbert and I just think, like, get him the football more. I know he's not like an elite talent, but overall wise, like around receiver 70 to 90 in the league. Like, he is someone that is a good receiver number 3 to have on the field. Obviously, with CeeDee Lamb being banged up, he kind of steps up into a higher role there, and he's just on the field a decent amount. So value-wise, he does end up being one of the better values on the slate. If you want to go with Turpin, makes sense as well. Let me go ahead and get into the tight ends for this slate as well. So I do like Jake Ferguson at his price tag. He's just getting a heavy target share, obviously with CeeDee Lamb out. So 12, 14, 7, just getting a lot of targets. I ended up getting a touchdown last week, which ended up helping him. I do really like him at his price tag, but to want to play him over like Trey McBride and Brock Bowers, where it's not that hard to get to them, it's kind of weird. I don't necessarily love that. And then we do need to talk about Elijah Erario. At his price tag, he's interesting. If you need to find a value tight end play, he does make sense. This is a game that could end up being a little bit more of a shootout. Ended up getting 4 targets last week. Looked good doing it. They were downfield targets as well. Almost had another catch as well on the sideline that would have really vaulted him, and I think would have been eye-popping to him on the stat sheet. And so he's just clearly too cheap. If you guys need to find a value, it makes sense. I don't mind punting at tight end a decent amount. And then DST wise, as you guys know, I'm always trying to find just the lowest price DST. That's not going to go negative. For now, let's just maybe Lamar Jackson ends up sitting. Then we can go with the Texans DST, pair that up with Woody Marks as our running back play. You're going to see we have about 1.6 left over on the slate. This is the tough part. Like, where do we pay up? Who do we pay up for instead? For now, I can get off of Garrett Wilson, but then I'm at a weird price tag. Like, if I could get to St. Brown here instead, I'd feel much better about it. But then where do we make, the pricing difference from there? Maybe go off of Devon Achane. I think he's solid though. Could just end up punting to the Saints. Dart to look good in his first game. Don't get me wrong, but still a rookie making his second start now. And the Saints are going to have a home game. So, not a terrible route to go there instead. Kind of works out. And I think we'd be fine running out Justin Fields, alone. We don't need to have one of his pass catchers there as well. But that being said, we do need to talk about Mason Taylor. He is someone that could end up, maybe having a pretty good game. He draws a good matchup on Monday night, and maybe someone we look at as well. Only priced at 2.8. Maybe an interesting way to stack Justin Fields there as well. So that's going to do it for the Week 5 first look here, guys. It is a more difficult slate for sure, less straightforward. As the week progresses, we'll get some injury notes and see what we can do there. But there are bye weeks this week as well, so probably more of a GPP slate as it currently sits right now, but it'll be interesting to see kind of what the ownership comes out to be. This might end up being a spot where we talk about ownership a little bit more than we've had to do thus far this season. But that's going to do it, guys. Thank you for being here. I do want to call it the 9to5sports.com website. If you guys are some of that places, props bets, we got a good site for you guys there, as well as obviously a lot of NFL DFS tools to help you guys be successful with your roster and lineup decisions. But that's going to do it for this video. Appreciate you guys being here. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.